Welcome to the Center for Homeland Defense and Security Master's Thesis Series. Today, I'm with Jim Seebock from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So you're a captain with the department and you're directing the Fusion Center at this time?
Yeah, I've been with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for 25 years, and in January I was just moved over to be the Fusion Center Director of the Southern Atlantic Counterterrorism Center.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so you came to the program with the idea of a thesis, but then...
Correct. So like everyone, you come to the program with the thesis idea and what I'm going to work on. And after my second in residency, I came home on a Friday, and Sunday night was 1 October. That was the night for the Las Vegas shooting from Mandalay Bay. And that night, my job was being over our operations center. And as a result of that, I wanted to contribute and I wanted to be a part of the solution as far as researching these types of events. How can we improve? How can we help all law enforcement? And I wanted to try to see if I could do my part with that. So it completely changed what I was going to research and do a thesis on. About a week after, into October, I reached out to Chief Pfeiffer from the New York Fire Department. He had spoken at our first in residency about his topic on vertical terrorism, gave us a presentation about his experiences, and through a conversation with him as well as with other faculty here at CHDS, I changed my thesis to responding to high-rise active shooters with the hopes that I can contribute to law enforcement and first responders on what I researched, and that might be able to be applied or identify recommendations moving forward.
And so what was the exact problem set for the thesis?
So it's a case study thesis, and sadly, it's good and bad. There was not a lot of researched cases of what Chief Pfeiffer called vertical terrorism or high-rise active shooters. There was only a few well-documented instances. There's a lot of active shooter events where someone might have been on the second floor shooting down, so they used some vertical height to their advantage, but the larger cases were obviously the Las Vegas shooting, which we had limited open source information as the year went on. There was the Mumbai terrorist attack where they used verticality to their advantage at the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. And then actually one of the first biggest documented, in some ways, active shooter instances was the Texas Tower shooting in 1967 at Austin, Texas.
And that was a landmark case because...
Yeah, because after the Texas Tower shooting, as well as an incident that happened in Los Angeles Police Department, within a year of that, the Tower shooting, police departments formed SWAT teams. And so if you start going through the evolution of response to significant events, you had SWAT teams being formed because of the need for equipment and skills to respond for those types of instances. Fast forward to Columbine, although that wasn't part of my research, you walked out of there knowing, hey, we got to change how we respond to active shooters and forming strike teams, to Mumbai, to where fire was used as a weapon. And ironically, in two of the instances I researched, fire was used or attempted to be used, but you came out of Mumbai with force protection and rescue task force response tactics for law enforcement as well as fire.
So before we get into the recommendations of your thesis, what surprised you the most as you did the research? So
a few things. The first thing when researching those three cases is the suspects themselves stood apart to where all of them, based on the research, were determined, meaning they had opportunities, in my opinion, to escape, but they chose not to. They placed obstacles in their way. Sometimes it was fire, like in Mumbai. In Texas, he tipped over a desk in front of a door. He wedged a dolly in another door frame. In Las Vegas, the shooter had put a video camera at the end of the hallway to alert him to the presence of officers. And so they are purposely trying to delay the responding officers to get to these types of instances because unlike a regular shooter that's always on the move, they purposely found an area of tactical advantage, and they want to try to keep that position as long as possible. And so by putting these obstacles in the way was different than obviously that of an active shooter that's just walking around in a building. Further, they pre-planned. All of them had knowledge of the locations they were going to be at, and were able to incorporate that. And so based on the suspect's actions, then the research shows, well, here's some response practices that would help. And in some of the responses in Texas, officers, although probably was not effective, but to some degree, as far as neutralizing the shooter, it did deter him. They started shooting from the ground up to the observation deck, and it did delay his ability to shoot at innocent people. So that was effective in some ways of stopping him from actively shooting innocent people.
Those were citizens that were shooting upward.
Some citizens jumped in, some got on top of rooftops, and some police officers acquired rifles and started shooting up at that tower as well. No shots were fired on the Las Vegas one, but nonetheless, that did stop him from his active shooting in Texas, and he started, the police got into a plane and started trying to fly over to shoot down, and he shot up at them, once again demonstrating to stop shooting at the crowd and to shoot at the first responders. In Las Vegas, when first responders pulled up, police, he started firing at the officers. And in my opinion, cops make a difference. And when they pulled up, instead of shooting at those 22,000 people in the crowd, he started shooting at the officers, taking his target off of them and saving their lives. And so that goes into part of the response that could be done, because instead of just forming a strike team and responding, perhaps, and I'm not a tactical expert, but there's a lot of simultaneous things we could do in addition to forming a strike team. Possibility of forming a counter sniper team if the perfect situation allows. I know law enforcement has to account for all the rounds, and shooting up is very difficult. If that perfect situation presents itself, it's best to have that plan already in place. Other response plans that made a difference was, the air asset, having an identifiable object for him to take his guns and put it on that. So that opens up the door for possibilities such as drones or other armored vehicles that could start being pulled up and being targeted as opposed to the citizens. But the biggest takeaway for me really was the focus on the first responder, because at the end of the day, on all of these instances, the sooner we can neutralize the threat, the sooner you can deter him from what he's doing, but obviously neutralizing him is going to save lives. And so law enforcement needs to put things in place that can help shorten that time frame down. And so in my opinion, we need to start, I think the next evolution, like post Columbine, is to provide officers access to equipment so they can overcome those obstacles. So the question you asked is, do police officers commonly have access to ballistic shields in their vehicles? Not SWAT teams, vehicles. Do they have bolt cutters? Do they have rams to get in doors or explosive breaching equipment? Do they have the type of equipment they would need to overcome these obstacles? Even in Las Vegas, a simple L bracket had to be defeated because it was preventing the officers from entering a hallway. Those types of crowbar type materials should be equipped with those officers, and then to train them to utilize that, whether it be ladders, rams, whatever's needed, but basic equipment and outfitting with them, I think, is the next level of response, because right now an officer, they have to form the strike teams, or you have to wait for a SWAT team. And I think there's, if you want to go even a further step, that sweet spot in the middle now to where Australia and the UK actually have response teams already formed, in teams of 2 or 3 that are already trained in command and control. They're trained in this equipment, and that way they're already a formed strike team. So again, those precious minutes of waiting for a strike team to be formed is already there, and it could save lives in the long run.
So in addition to the recommendations that you just mentioned, what are the things that you found post-thesis that would be helpful for our audience to know?
Sure. There was a few things that I did mention that were still in the thesis, and that was the technology solution to where acoustic, audio, gunfire detection systems that are available. I've learned that there's some available for inside buildings and out. There is working with your private sector partners, but one of the things that our city is trying to do is actually push for ordinance or building codes, like put a placard on the outside of a building, like every 10 floors, because again, to identify the floors quicker, for someone looking up, for a first responder, whether it be with binoculars or with just being able to visually see a little square placard every 10 floors, so we can quickly identify the floor that a shooter might be shooting out of, is something that our city is pushing as well.
For smaller jurisdictions, what are your recommendations?
So I understand that smaller agencies can't always put multiple people in one vehicle, but what they can do is they can outfit them with proper equipment, because these instances can happen really anywhere. When with high rises are in every city, even small cities. Even if it's a 2 or 3 floor advantage, it's still an advantage. And these people are setting up barricades and obstacles. And so equipping with your officers, the street officers, with ballistic shields, with the crowbars, the rams, ladders, bolt cutters, and extra ammunition. But the common things that they should have with them, instead of having to wait for the 15-20 minutes for a SWAT team, to me that's an easy deliverable to have some type of equipment vehicle or outfit certain vehicles each shift that have that extra equipment. Would be an easy way to move forward.
Excellent. Thank you for your excellent research, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.